As citizens living in a 21st century world, we are constantly surrounded by media in its various forms. Whether this be social media, news feeds, or other methods of media consumption, media is able to penetrate almost every realm of society. But how do we know what media is reliable? How can we tell what is fake news and what is real? The answer to these questions is undeniably complicated, but can be made easier through media literacy. So what is media literacy? At its root, media literacy is simply the process of applying critical thinking to the media a person consumes. What does this actually mean practically, though? Well, let's begin with an example. So you're scrolling through your social media feeds and come across a post that says the President of the United States has just signed an executive order that will cost thousands of people their jobs. This piece of media, without applying media literacy, will be taken at face value and be added to your vault of ideas and information, oftentimes reaffirming previously held beliefs. This is called confirmation bias. This is a psychological phenomenon that occurs when people see information that goes along with the ideas they already have, confirming their belief that the information is accurate. But what if I were to tell you that that post came from an article published by a right-leaning media organization known for its bias against Democratic presidents? This should seemingly change the consumption of this information, but without critical thinking, this often does not occur. Okay, so back to our scenario. You decide, instead of simply viewing this information, storing it, and continuing on with your life, to dig a bit deeper. What's your next step? One great approach is to explore the issue from as unbiased a perspective as possible. This is easier said than done, though. It is nearly impossible for any news organization to be completely unbiased, so source selection is of the utmost importance. How do you evaluate an article's leaning? First, consider the source's known media bias. Are they known for left-leaning viewpoints like MSNBC, or right-wing biases like Fox News? Assessing the news source will help you better understand the different biases within its articles. Keep in mind, not all articles from a biased source necessarily lean the same way, so be careful in your analysis. Many articles will follow the traditional leaning of the news source, while others will be neutral, and some even with an opposite leaning, depending on the topic. If you're unsure what the bias is, it's often best to compare the article with an opposite viewpoint or with an article from a neutral source. Biasly.com provides its side-by-side bias view and article opposite viewpoints on every article to help make the distinction more clear for its viewers. Next, explore whether the story is replicated across multiple news organizations. Most of the time, if a story is only being reported by one source, especially with obvious leanings, there's a reason for this. Stories that are mostly factual are likely to appear in multiple popular media sources. Once you have established the source and the accuracy of the story, another important factor is to think critically about the intentions of the media. What is the author or organization trying to say? What are their goals in producing this article? So, back to our example. We know about the biases of the organization that this information is coming from. Imagine that we have now also discovered that this perspective is not being replicated across multiple news outlets and organizations. We now can think of the author's intentions in a very different way. With this information, it is clear that the author might have the goal of shedding negative light on the President of the United States, as well as attempting to convince readers that he or she is an inadequate president. This makes the consumption of this media very different than what you initially thought when you saw it in your social media feed. So what are the takeaways? Media literacy is the process of thinking critically about the media and information we consume. Being media literate requires digging deeper into the background of the information and organizations in order to identify biases. It is crucial to explore how given media stands in comparison to other similar media. A reader must consider how an author's intentions and biases can be woven into the media being consumed, often with subtlety and not immediately identifiable. Media literacy will by no means be the immediate cure for stopping misinformation and fake news, but it is definitely a good start.